Nous allons maintenant passer à la cérémonie officielle de passation des témoins. D'abord, je vais vous remettre l'acte constitutif de l'Union africaine. Puis on va nous amener le drapeau. Je vais ensuite remettre d'autres documents, le règlement intérieur et autres, et le marteau.
Your Excellency, Dr. Thomas Boni Yaya, Chairperson of the African Union and President of the Republic of Benin. Your Excellency, Ato Hailemariam Desalegn, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Dr. Zheng Ping, outgoing Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the Deputy Chairperson, the outgoing commissioners and the incoming commissioners, members of the AU Commission staff, members of the Permanent Representative Committee, PRC, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I stand before you today as a humble servant of the African continent and its people, ready, together with the newly elected Commission, to join the hundreds of African Commission staff who have held the banner of the African Union flying high. The position has been held by an illustrious list of selfless and dedicated Africans who have had the privilege and honor of leading the Secretariat and the Commission of a preeminent continental organization, first the Organization of African Unity, and now the African Union. While I'm filled with humility and honor that I've been elected into this position, the magnitude of the task does not escape me. Let me therefore say that from the onset that I'll expect to stand on the shoulders of the giants that have preceded me, working together with the member states and other partners to create a prosperous Africa which is at peace with itself and the world. In this regard, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the current chairperson of the African Union, who is not only here amongst us today, but who has given me his full support and encouragement since my election, the President of Benin, His Excellency, Dr. Thomas Boni Yaya. We are also honored to have our host, the Ethiopian Prime Minister, His Excellency Ato Hailemariam Desalegn, with us. We wish to convey best wishes to him as he discharges the duties of the office of Prime Minister of this great country, building a developmental state on the foundations of an ancient and progressive civilization. At this moment, I also wish to pay tribute to one of Africa's great sons, a visionary, a firm proponent of the Renaissance of the continent, the late Prime Minister, Meles Zenawi, who made such a significant contribution to Ethiopia, Africa, and to humanity as a whole. I also want to acknowledge the achievements and the efforts of my predecessor and outgoing chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Jean Ping. Thank you, Dr. Ping, for working tirelessly these past 4.5 years to build on the work of those who have come before us, such as President Alpha Konare and others, including the founders of our organization. Through your commitment and dedication during your term of service, the African Union Commission has made many strides, and I will therefore build on the foundation that you have laid. Merci, my friend. Of course, paying tribute to the chair of the commission goes hand in hand to paying tribute to the commissioners and the rest of the team that worked with him, because all of us are as good as our teams. So thank you to the commissioners and to all the staff of the African Union for the progress that we have achieved as a continent. Excellencies, distinguished guests, the eve of the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Organization of African Union offers us a golden opportunity to take stock of where we've come from and where we are today in order to assist us to plan for the journey ahead. At this point, I would like to quote from former President Nelson Mandela in his long walk to freedom. I quote, "I've walked a long road to freedom. I tried not to falter. I've missed steps along the way, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing the great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I've taken a moment to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look at the distance I've come. But I can only rest for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended," close quote. And I think this long walk, though here it's referred to Mandela's walk to freedom, can also be seen as the long walk of the continent. Indeed, our long walk to a prosperous, peaceful, and integrated Africa has not ended, and there are many more hills to climb ahead of us. Looking at the distance we have traveled, it might be interesting to just recall where we come from in the distant past. And there is no doubt today that Africa is the cradle of humanity and advanced civilization. We've had a very rich and proud history as Africans on this continent. And as I say, we have had advanced civilizations, as evidenced by the architect of Egypt, the Sphinx and the pyramids, the Tunisian city of Carthage, the great Zimbabwe, the old city of Timbuktu, and many others. If we look at the intricate sculptures of Makonde of Tanzania and Mozambique, the Benin bronzes and in Nigeria, and the beautiful rock paintings of the Drakensberg in Algeria. And we can also boast of organized, highly organized kingdoms from the Mesopotamia, the Ashanti, the Monomotapa, to name a few. We also have a rich astronomical heritage. The Dogon people of Mali have generational knowledge, for instance, of the star Sirius A and B, which appears only once in 50 years. But scientists and astronomers are only now discovering what the Dogon people have known for generations. Gender equality flourished in our ancient lands, where women occupied positions of responsibility. For an example, we had Queen Nzinga of Angola, Makeda, the Queen of Sheba of Ethiopia, Queen Nefertiti of Egypt, Nehenda of Zimbabwe, Ya Asewantawe of the Ashanti Empire, Dahia Al-Khani of Mauritania, Buktu of Mali, and many, many other women that held very great responsibilities in our ancient civilizations. Of course, this great history was followed by a darker side of our history, which had slavery and colonialism. But of course, the continent, through the anti-colonial struggles and wars of liberation, responded to that and made sure it brings to an end that dark side of our history. And of course, our forebearers decided to unite and created the Organization of African Unity. At the launch of the AU in 1963, the Emperor Haile Selassie, as the first chairperson, said, I quote, "We name as our first great task the final liberation of those Africans still dominated by foreign exploitation and control." And he continued, "As we renew our vow that all Africa shall be free, let us also resolve that old wounds shall be healed and past scars forgotten, and memories of the past injustice shall not divert us from more pressing business at hand. We shall live in peace with our former colonizers, shunning recrimination and bitterness, and forswearing the luxury of vengeance and retaliation, lest the acid of hatred erode our souls and poison our hearts." I close quotes. So today, we can say without fear of contradiction that indeed the founding generation of this organization defined and fulfilled their mission to liberate the continent. And it is up to us to now, as we have done in the AU, defined our own mission, and it is up to us to fulfill it and not betray it. Distinguished guests and excellencies, looking at the vista that surrounds us today, we have come a long way. Over the last 2 decades, we have witnessed momentous changes to the political landscape of the African continent. Democratic elections have become the norm, demonstrating the commitment of African states to promote political culture based on legitimacy and accountability. This development has not taken place in a vacuum. It has taken place within the context of the African Union efforts aimed at consolidating democracy in our continent. In spite of this laudable progress, we must also acknowledge that there have been some difficulties and setbacks, with pockets of instability and conflict. It is therefore our responsibility as governments, as citizens, as regional bodies, to ensure that the democratic process is irrevocable and to pledge ourselves to work for its success. For our part as the Commission, I would like to assure you that we will take proactive steps, as has been done before, to support member states and regional bodies in their efforts to promote, consolidate, expand citizen-centered developmental and democratic governance. One cannot overemphasize the point that peace and stability are a prerequisite for social, economic, and human development and good governance. While we should feel proud of our achievements in this regard, we must not forget that these pockets of conflicts not only cause untold suffering, death, and destruction, but also impede the social, political, and economic. We will therefore spare no efforts to try and resolve conflicts in Mali and the Sahelian region. The crisis that has the potential to spread across the region and even the continent. We shall be working closely with the United Nations Security Council and of course with the regional organization ECOWAS, which has been dealing with the matter to now. We will of course continue to provide necessary support to the AU High-Level Panel on Sudan so that it can help with both the Republic of Sudan and South Sudan in finalizing all outstanding issues between them. Continued support will also be provided to the newly elected Somali government to bring an end to conflict that has ravaged the sister republic for over 30 years and help build strong institutions of governance and public order. In the light of the resurgence of armed conflict in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, we will support all efforts to bring about peace and stability in the DRC and the Great Lakes region as a whole. And of course, we will not forget Guinea-Bissau. Drawing on the lessons learned from recent conflicts on the continent, we will take appropriate measures to improve cooperation and coordination with the United Nations, given its primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. The African Union, as the premier continental organization, will take leadership role in preventing, managing and resolution of conflicts in the continent, as well as post-conflict reconstruction and development. And of course, this it will do working with the regional organizations. And this is in accordance with the principle of finding African solutions to African problems. Excellencies and distinguished guests, conflicts and conflict resolution, important as it may be, has to be balanced with development, because the majority of countries on our continent are stable and they are developing. But development and conflict resolution as we have been doing in the past. But maybe just taking a look at where we are today. Africa accounts for more than a quarter of the world's arable land. And land is a source of livelihood for 70% of its people. However, Africa currently generates only 10% of global agricultural output and imports. It imports tens of billions of dollars of food a year. As a continent, we must strive towards food security. Access to food is the most basic right. No nation or continent can develop to its full potential if it cannot feed itself. If we invest in increasing the productivity of our land, we can have food security, export and generate revenue, and also save the resources we use to import food. All these resources can be used for development. We need to accelerate the implementation. Our continent is also well endowed with mineral and other resources, with estimates that Africa accounts for 30% of the world's minerals reserves. The people of the continent have not seen the full benefit of these resources. Neither have their exploitation been used to develop the productive economies of our continent. The situation that President Kwame Nkrumah described still prevails. In his words, that I quote, "That is why we have in Africa the paradox of poverty in the midst of plenty and scarcity in the midst of abundance." So it's important that we all try to make sure that we use these resources to improve our productive capacities, but also for the benefit of all our people and their development. Also, as we speak, Africa has an unacceptable high mortality and infant rate. What women in other countries, especially in the developed world, take for granted as a normal physiological function of giving birth and ensuring the continuation of the human race, in our continent, it means putting your life at risk, death of an individual. It means the survival of young children that she may be leaving behind is not guaranteed. And if they survive, they may not reach their full potential in life. And of course, the loss of a mother is a loss to the family and to the community. And again, if we look at in 1963, when the OAU was launched, the African population was just above 250 million. Now we stand at over 1 billion, and this figure is expected to rise to 2 billion by 2050. Africa has the advantage of having a youthful population, unlike many developing countries who are struggling with aging populations. We must therefore add positively to our societies, nations, and the continent. Our increased investment in young people, in their education and training, in youth employment, in their general economic and social participation, must assist them to reach their full potential. An investment in the youth is therefore an investment in the future. We are also a continent where at least 50% of our people are women. In fact, a little bit more. Let us look at this not only as a human rights issue, but also as a resource that we must develop by prioritizing investment in the education and health of women and girl children. To this end, we must accelerate the implementation of programs related to the Decade of Women. In our efforts to advance and accelerate gender equality, at a time when prospects look bright for our continent, we should ensure that women have access and control of productive resources, including in agriculture and in business in general. Proactive measures should be taken to bring women into the mainstream of decision-making processes and structures at all levels of society. Of course, this decision was taken a long time ago by the heads of state. Again, we need to make sure that we implement the decisions of the heads of state. Excellencies, distinguished guests, contemporary literature on Africa paints a very positive vista of the continent's prospect, portraying it as the El Dorado of the 21st century. The narrative on Africa as the next pole of growth and prosperity has come to be accepted by all. This confirms the prophecy of our leaders, who on the eve of the new millennium in 1999 declared that the next century will be the African century. This more robust economic performance is also having an effect on socio-economic conditions on human development in general. In 2010 and 11 UN report assessing the 2015 Millennium Development Goals indicate that sub-Saharan Africa progress has been made in reducing absolute poverty, with improvements in primary education enrollment and a decline in under 5 infant mortality rates. Our common objectives remain to define and build a trajectory that extracts the continent from poverty and underdevelopment. Among the core attributes of the African agenda are the shared values of consistent political and democratic freedom, the development and modernization of African productive forces. All this must take place within the context of a renewed momentum of the continent's economic integration. Key to integration is the development of our infrastructure connectivity between our countries and regions to facilitate people-to-people relations and to facilitate intra-African trade and intra-African tourism. Excellencies, the only way to ensure success in our continent's endeavors is to move together as one united continent and people. Unity is our watchword. Unity is our salvation. Indeed, as Prime Minister Lumumba said in 1960, I quote, "We all know and the whole world knows that Algeria is not French, that Angola is not Portuguese, that Kenya is not English, and Rwanda, Burundi is not Belgian. We know that Africa is neither French We know that Africa is neither French, nor British, nor American, nor Russian, but it is African." So as we approach the next hills, let us recall the vision for our continent as articulated by the African Union and which guides the work of the Commission: an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. Next year, of course, we will be celebrating 50 years of our anniversary. And we must make sure that we are able to celebrate the achievements of 50 years, but also indicate to ourselves and to the continent and the rest of the world where we want to go in the next 50 years. Furthermore, when we gather to celebrate in May 2020, we should indeed be charting our way forward for the next 50 years. And this should be our agenda in the coming months, and of course completed beyond 2030. Excellencies, all these challenges require an organizational machinery that is equal to the task of implementing our vision of an integrated, prosperous, peaceful and people-centered Africa. There has been progress in strengthening. The Commission is an instrument created by and for member states of the Union. It does not exist in a vacuum and cannot work in a vacuum. It shall therefore remain and maintain a close contact with the member states through the PRC, which plays a critical role in implementing decisions of the African Union, heads of state, and the vision of our continent. And I would just like to refer to the Olympics, to the London Olympics. It was very heartening. One evening, I was watching the track events, and we could see the great talent in our continent and the diaspora. And we must therefore continue to build relations with our brothers and sisters, ensure that they make even greater inputs into the development of the continent. We must also improve our resource mobilization for our continent and regional programs. A lot more needs to be done to mobilize resources from within our continent, in addition to the support that we get from our partners. We must provide for our development whilst not cutting ourselves from the support that we graciously receive from our cooperating partners. To our global partners, we express our appreciation for the support to the African Union. We must continue to work and re-evaluate our strategic partnership with a view to enhance them and to ensure that they focus on the strategic priorities of the continent. We must build partnerships that are mutually beneficial. Your Excellencies, I would like to reiterate that we should look at ourselves as a continent, not only as individual countries. We are a formidable force as the continent if we are united, but if we are divided, we are very weak. Nobody can ignore us united. Nobody cannot see the continent as a force of global change if we look at ourselves collectively as a continent. So I accept this responsibility, encouraged by the fact that the continent is full of possibilities and opportunities. And I take this responsibility with the hope that together, united in our diversity, driven by our love of our continent and its people, shall every day do our best to bring the reality that was declared, that the African century is the 21st century. So together with our team, we shall do our best, and we hope that we'll get all the support that we need. And I'd like to conclude by thanking our host for the support that it has given and will continue to give to the AU and the commissioners, but also to wish the outgoing chair bon voyage and good health and good wishes for your future endeavors, and we will be in touch. Thank you.